All right, so if you feel like you have a slow metabolism, today I'm going to show you how to fix it, and I'm going to show you 5 practical steps based on the people who have the fastest metabolisms in the world, but made realistic for the average busy professional, which means that, again, if you have a slow metabolism, you feel like no matter how little you eat, you can't lose weight at the rate that you would expect. This is probably the root cause, and there are actually 4 root causes for why your metabolism is slow, which we're going to dive into first before we go into the 5 steps on how to fix it. And by the end of this video, you know exactly how to get your metabolism fast enough that you can lose fat much more easily and efficiently, so you can stop struggling with all the side effects of a slow metabolism. So first, let's go down through the root causes. So if you've done a lot of diets, okay, whether they were healthy diets or unhealthy diets, but you didn't come off those diets properly. Like even if you do a healthy diet that's not overly low, but you never actually do a proper metabolic recovery phase afterwards, or you just go back to normal eating, whatever, then this is a problem. You know, ideally when you're dieting, you want to build healthy habits that you can maintain for the long term, but you also always need to transition off. And if you just finished the diet and you're scared of gaining the weight back, but you don't want to have to eat very little forever, this step-by-step guide will actually work for you as well, because these 5 steps will help get your metabolism fast enough to easily maintain your weight loss for the long term and potentially even lose more weight if you're in a plateau. And of course, if you've been doing just chronic diets, especially unhealthy diets where you go into too sharp of a deficit, you bring your calories too low, you're trying to starve yourself to lose weight, yet it's barely working anymore because your metabolism is slowed down and adapted, then these 5 steps are absolutely crucial. And please stop destroying yourself with these, disgustingly low calorie diets, and just do what I'm going to tell you today, and it's going to fix everything. Just do it slowly and moderately, and within the next, 1 to 2 months, your metabolism is going to be fast again, and you'll be able to lose weight, inshallah. Now, and then, of course, keto and low carb and even fasting can also slow your metabolism down. So that's another root cause. Any of these diets that you've done in the past, especially the more extreme diets, will slow your metabolism down, but even a more moderate diet will slightly slow your metabolism down. Of course, the more extreme the diet, the more extreme the rate of metabolic suppression, and therefore the more urgent the solution. But these steps are going to work no matter what your starting point is. It's just obviously you're going to need to start relatively to you. Now, genetics do play a role as well, but don't worry, no matter how slow your genetics are or how bad your genetics are, you can still speed up your metabolism to a lot faster than it is right now, which is going to help you lose fat much more easily. And then another root cause of having a low metabolic rate is if you don't have enough muscle. And so, if you've never trained your muscles properly, you only did cardio and diet, or you're a beginner with not a lot of muscle, or you're skinny fat, or you're obese, but you just don't really have a lot of muscle on your body, or you're not super strong, or whatever it may be, this is a potential root cause too. But even if you have a lot of muscle, but you've done, a lot of chronic diets, you could still have a suppressed metabolism. But if you have both factors, then it's a double whammy. And then throw genetics on top of that is 3 factors why some people eat so little yet don't lose weight, even if they're tracking properly everything. Another root cause of having too little muscle, being under muscled, is if you were doing, a calorie deficit or a weight loss diet and you did not eat enough protein, or you did not lift enough, or you tried to lose weight too quickly, a lot of the weight that you lost was probably muscle, which is another one of the huge root causes of your slow metabolism, and why you can't lose more weight, and why you gain it back faster each time that you lose it, and it's harder to lose it each time that you lose it again. It's because you're losing more and more muscle over time, which is slowing your metabolic rate over time, which makes it easier to gain the weight back and harder to lose it. Okay, so this is another huge root cause. And then also, if you used an unnatural means of losing weight like Ozempic or a stomach staple or gastric sleeve or liposuction, you never really built the habits, and Ozempic just nukes your muscle mass because it's hard to eat enough protein, and most people who take Ozempic never learn how to do nutrition or training properly. They just use the little hacks, whatever it is. So when you undereat like crazy with these 2 things, it's really going to nuke your metabolism because you lose a lot of muscle. Liposuction doesn't kill your muscle mass or anything, but I've only actually known one person who did it, and that person had to spend 3 months in recovery where they really couldn't do much activity, even though that person was a very active person before. So not a good method. Just do it naturally, like I say in all my videos. Now, if you have micronutrient deficiencies, this can also contribute to a slow metabolism, but the majority of people who come to me, it's a combination of dieting history and too little muscle, which again, those 2 things are interrelated if a person did too low of protein on a diet or didn't lift enough. So, if you break these into subpoints, there's actually more than 4 root causes, but regardless, we can speed up your metabolism and help you lose weight faster, more easily, and more easily keep it off by following the steps of speeding up your metabolism. So before we get into the steps, I want you to understand why the steps work well, okay? So the steps I'm going to give you are going to be very realistic, but if we want to find realistic steps on how to speed up the metabolism, we should look to the people who have the fastest metabolisms in the world. Even if they started with normal genetics or only slightly good genetics, these people get freakishly huge metabolisms. So the first example is professional bodybuilders. Now, bear with me for a second. I'm not going to make you do a professional bodybuilder routine, but I'm going to take principles from it that are realistic, as well as the other examples of types of people I'm going to show you today that have really fast metabolisms, so you can learn, how you can apply practical, easy to sustain, enjoyable versions of some of the strategies that they use made realistic to your life so you can get better results. So first, let's look at professional bodybuilders. Bodybuilders, they do these long muscle building phases where they build their calories more and more. They're eating tons of carbs and protein to the point where even when they're in a fat loss phase where they're losing 2 to 4 pounds of body fat per week, they're eating 4,000 to 6,000 calories a day. And sometimes on their cheat day, they'll even eat 12,000 to 20,000 calories, and their metabolism just ramps up more and more and gets faster and faster. And they end up losing weight too fast to where they have to eat even more so they don't lose weight too fast when they're in a cutting phase. And they'll get down to 3 to 4% body fat with huge amounts of muscle. And obviously, all these guys are taking steroids, so it's not completely applicable to you, but there are actually some principles in this that we're going to go into today that help you speed up your metabolism. Now, another person, which some of these people are taking performance-enhancing drugs, others aren't, but professional athletes and swimmers and MMA fighters, a lot of these people eat crazy amounts of calories, and they're able to get really lean, get a six-pack, all that stuff. Michael Phelps was famous for eating 12,000 calories a day. Maybe that wasn't every day, but the fact he had the metabolic capacity to do that without getting fat and was still very lean and had a good body, is another clue to how do we speed up our metabolism, right? And then even if you look at, female athletes, some of them are only 120 pounds, yet despite being lean, petite, and small, they'll eat 3,000 to 4,000 calories a day, versus you might have some men who are much heavier and bigger than them, double their size, 240 pounds, who are not even losing weight, even though they're eating 2,500 calories. So when we look at the examples of these people, there's certain things that they do that are not realistic for you, but we're going to get a realistic version of this and give you a step-by-step on how to lose weight. So obviously, I'm not going to ask you to work out 7 days a week for 2 to 3 hours and do twice a day workouts and tons of cardio. I'm not going to ask you to take any, drugs or anything that's unnatural or damaging to your health. I'm not going to tell you to eat 6 to 8 meals a day. I'm not going to tell you to build 100 pounds of muscle and do a giant off-season bulk like what the bodybuilders do. I'm not going to make you work out 3 to 5 times a day, but there's a realistic version of all these steps, and this is the plan to boost your metabolism. So the first step is, and we're going to go deep into each of these steps so you know how to practically apply it to yourself, but just to give the overview of the practical, realistic steps, you're going to work out 3 to 5 days a week for 30 to 45 minutes, and you're going to go for a walk every day. And I'm going to tell you what type of workout to do. It's strength training, but it's a specific type of strength training that's good for your longevity instead of beating up your joints, and boosts your metabolism and muscle mass, which gets your metabolism even faster and allows you to eat more as well. The step 2 is not always required. In fact, for most clients, I don't make them do this, but for the ones with more severe issues or who know that they have an underlying condition, this is important, which is getting your blood work and then taking natural supplements that, augment whatever you might be missing. Like, let's say that you're, vitamin D deficient, you definitely have to take vitamin D. Let's say you don't have enough selenium or iodine, and that's causing your thyroid to be slowed down, then that would be the micronutrient root cause of a slow metabolism, which means that we need to supplement those things or get them through your diet or both, so that we can compensate for whatever deficits you may have. A lot of people are magnesium deficient, and that's very hard to get through diet, so sometimes we have to supplement it, versus, other things are easy to just get in your diet without having to supplement it, right? So we could talk further about that, and I talk about that in some of my other videos. Now, the next step is you need to eat 3 meals and 2 snacks a day, or 4 meals and 1 snack, comprised of the right macros, which we're going to cover today. So again, a lot of people don't really understand that eating only 1 or 2 meals a day, even though there's a lot of people who do get good results on intermittent fasting and OMAD, 99% of people actually get really bad results on IF and OMAD. A lot of people, majority of people, 97 to 99% of people are much better off getting a steady stream of lean proteins and complex carbs to stimulate their thyroid, stimulate their metabolism, keep their blood sugar consistent, keep their cortisol, their stress hormone low, so that their metabolism, their thyroid is optimized for better metabolism, better muscle mass, better muscular recovery, better energy levels, everything, which is how we increase your metabolism. So don't do these 1 to 2 meals a day diets. They only work short term until your metabolism slows down, and that might be the root cause for why your metabolism is slow. Every time I've done intermittent fasting, within the first week I might feel good, the second week I might feel okay, but by the third week it always slows down. I feel tired. Same thing in Ramadan. Even if I get the right sleep, the right macros, everything, after doing extended fasting, by the end of Ramadan I'm super tired. whether I'm getting enough sleep or not, right? So, which is fine. We do that for the sake of Allah, but after Ramadan, you definitely have to do a metabolic optimization phase and follow the steps that I'm giving you in this video to speed up your metabolism after Ramadan, because majority of people, their metabolism slows down in Ramadan, which is part of how people might not even eat that much, yet they gain a bunch of weight. And then, of course, if you eat a bunch of oily food in Ramadan, then you're getting the double whammy of your metabolism slowing from fasting, plus binge eating at night. Same thing if you're intermittent fasting and binging, like a lot of people do. A lot of doctors, doctor syndrome, they don't eat all day, then they binge a bunch of food at night. It's how these guys get so fat, even though they're supposed to be a healthcare professional, right? Now, the next step that we're going to cover today is building muscle and doing a metabolic optimization / recovery / priming phase, reverse diet. There's many names for it, which we're going to go through the step by step today. So you're stimulating the thyroid with complex carbs, and then being more active in your day-to-day life. You know, a lot of you might already be very active, so this may or may not be applicable. But of course, if you're only doing 2,000 to 3,000 steps a day, you're super sedentary. It's no wonder you're not burning that many calories. You're not really stimulating your metabolism at all. Another huge one: get 7 hours of sleep per night, and make sure that you have, even if it's just 5 to 15 minutes of, you know, stress and mental health management routines in your day, whether that's going for a walk, a gratitude journal, a car. There's so many different ways of doing this that really help, because when your stress levels are high, this raises cortisol, your stress hormone, which can have a negative effect on your metabolism, your thyroid, your energy levels, your, you know, sense of well-being, your ability to stick to a diet, increases cravings. Same thing with sleep. If you don't get enough sleep, your metabolism slows down, your stress hormones go up, your appetite goes up, you start craving more junk food, so you got to get enough, and you start getting bloated, digestive distress. So make sure you're getting enough sleep and handling your stress, or it's going to affect your digestion, your metabolism, everything, and make you bloated and, you know, make your belly bigger, right? Which is what we're trying to fix here, is your metabolism, and lose fat, and, you know, shrink the belly and all that stuff, right? So now let's dive into each point, okay? I'm not leaving any stones unturned here. I want you guys to have an end-to-end solution with everything I could possibly give you today that doesn't necessarily need to be customized to you, and then we can talk about customization later. So what do I mean when I say work out 3 to 5 days a week for 30 to 45 minutes and daily walks? So when you work out, I'm not just saying like go do some group training class or lift some 2-pound dumbbells. What I'm talking about is progressive functional strength training, okay? The benefits of this is you get strength, energy, your hormones are optimized, testosterone goes up, cortisol goes down, growth hormone goes up, you know, insulin sensitivity goes up, helps, you know, fix people's diabetes, increases your long-term insulin sensitivity, longevity, everything, increases your mobility. It's especially important as you get older if you don't want to have knee pain when you're praying. You know, when you're 70 or even 50 or even 30, people get knee pain. Like when I used to not take care of my mobility, even in my late 20s and early 30s, I was getting knee problems versus when I fixed my diet, got rid of the inflammation, got enough protein, fixed my mobility. Of course, you know, my knee became much better, and alhamdulillah, I'm able to pray normally. But again, we talk about this in a lot of videos, so we can go deeper into that if you want to check out my other videos on it. But I want to give you just the basic steps today, right? When you do this type of training, you build muscle, which again is one of the greatest ways to increase your metabolism and fix the root cause of slow metabolism that comes from being under-muscled. But even if you're not under-muscled, it always benefits you to build a bit more muscle. Like even if you build 5 to 10 pounds of lean muscle, which is not going to add any bulk if you're not trying to gain any bulk, right? Of course, if you're trying to gain bulk, you can gain more than that. But like 5 to 10 pounds distributed on your body, you're just going to look more toned. You're not going to look any bigger, yet you're going to be so much more toned, and that's going to dramatically increase your metabolism by enough that you'll be able to eat a lot more food, and that's going to help you to tolerate more carbs, to eat more food overall, to produce more energy, more force, and also burn more calories. So your metabolic rate goes up. Now, if you're really busy and you don't like working out, you know, there's some ways we can teach you how to enjoy working out. Maybe you just need to learn what you're doing or find a style that works for you. But even if you try everything, every style of working out, we try everything and you still just hate it and it always takes discipline, no problem. Just 3 times a week for 15 to 30 minutes is a sufficient bare minimum, and you can do this from home if needed, whether, you know, you don't have a halal gym environment near you, or you're uncomfortable for Islamic reasons or general reasons, you know, whatever it may be, that's totally fine. You can train from home. We can get some basic home equipment, adjustable dumbbells and a bench, and you're good to go. Now, if you do enjoy working out, you still don't want to do too much, right? Because let's say you go work out 7 days a week for 1 to 2 hours as a natural, you're not going to be able to recover from that. See, these steroid bodybuilders who train 2 to 3 hours a day, 7 days a week, twice a day, they're on steroids. You know, these athletes, a lot of them are also on performance-enhancing drugs, and a lot of them just have elite genetics where it can train a lot more than the average person. But for the average busy professional, you're very unlikely to be able to do more than 5 days a week for more than 45 to 60 minutes. So be careful of overtraining, because overtraining does slow your metabolism down too. Your cortisol becomes high if you overtrain, okay? So you need to ramp up into it. If you're not sure where to start more towards the lower end, like 3 to 4 times a week for 30 to 45 minutes. And then if you fall in love with it, You can increase to 5 after maybe a couple of months once your body's used to it, 45 to 60 minutes. And if you hate it, no problem. You can go down to 3 times a week for 15 to 30 minutes or switch it up a bit until you find something you like. So as I mentioned, when you work out, a couple things happen. You build muscle, metabolism goes up, insulin sensitivity goes up, nutrient partitioning improves. And what that does, it means that when you eat, more food, more of that goes towards muscle repair, muscle growth, everything else, while stimulating your metabolism because you're eating more food and you're telling your body it's not in a starvation cycle anymore, which upregulates your metabolism. And then you gain muscle, which further upregulates your metabolism. So it's a double whammy. And on top of that, when you do the macros and the reverse dieting and all the stuff I talk about in step 3, your metabolism skyrockets. I mean, I've seen some people whose metabolism within a couple of weeks has increased by 1,000 calories a day, where they can literally eat 1,000 more calories a day and lose weight or maintain their weight versus the amount of weight or the 1,000 calories less that they had to eat before to lose weight and maintain their weight. So it's pretty amazing to see this, and that's why I'm a huge fan of this and why I talk about this in a lot of my videos, and you see it a lot in my testimonials as well. Okay? So this is all just a synergistic effect. Now walking, let's talk about walking. Of course, walking burns calories, but it also gets your blood flowing and metabolism moving. Okay? If you like cardio, you can also throw in some cardio. Just don't go so crazy with it, right? And I always err on the side of lower impact cardio. That's why I'm a big fan of walking, unless you're super athletic. Like if you've been playing basketball or doing boxing or, bike cycling or running for your whole life, you don't have to just, scale that down if you're very used to it and it's very easy for you. Like I have some clients who, even though they started off very overweight at like 210 plus pounds, they were either a basketball player or a cyclist or a runner. And so they could continue to do that 2, 3, 4 times a week and recover from it just fine on top of the strength training, versus other people who have not done any type of cardio for 20 years. No, you definitely don't want to be trying to force yourself to do crazy cardio from the beginning. You're going to burn yourself out real quick and mess up your ability to do the lifting session. So for somebody who's more sedentary, we want to start with walking, because walking is super low impact. It actually reduces your stress instead of increasing it. And so walking for the first 3 to 6 months is the best if you're, somebody who's pretty deconditioned, hasn't done cardio in a while. And then after 3 to 6 months, you can start adding in some treadmill, some running, some basketball, some MMA or boxing or whatever you want to throw in on top of that. Sprints, high intensity interval training. But if you're somebody who's deconditioned, or you've been trying to do these circuit classes and, F45, Orange Theory, whatever, but it's just beating you up, making you feel burnt out after a couple of days or weeks, you should scale off of that and focus on strength training and walking. And then after 3 to 6 months, once you've lost some weight, built some conditioning, gotten to the rhythm of things, nutrition is dialed in, recovery is dialed in, hormones are optimized instead of high cortisol and low testosterone, a lot of the factors a lot of people have, then you can maybe add in some cardio again after 3 to 6 months. But again, if you're well conditioned to it, you can start from the beginning. So anyways, now let's talk about, we're just going to quickly talk about blood work and micronutrients. So this step is pretty semi-optional, right? Like step 3 is the big one that we do with pretty much everybody, step 1 and 3. But step 2, I just threw it in here because it could be a reason why you could have some issues, right? A lot of people are deficient in vitamin D, vitamin K, potassium, magnesium, selenium, iodine. So if you are suspicious that you may be deficient in one of these things because you have some of the symptoms, which I've talked about the symptoms of low vitamin D in other videos. I might do another one on magnesium. Maybe you get a lot of cramps. Maybe your testosterone levels are low. Obviously metabolism is a big side effect. Maybe your joints and bones feel brittle. These are potentially root causes of being deficient in these things, right? And the cramps for these, the slow metabolism for these. So these are foods that we usually put in our clients' diets anyways, but if you want to go get a blood test and that's accessible for you, then you could definitely do that. Okay. But usually, even if we're eating a lot of like nutrient dense foods like chicken breast, fish, red meat, etc., eggs, you still usually are going to have to supplement magnesium. If you can't really get consistent sunlight, you might need to supplement vitamin D. You always want to supplement vitamin K with vitamin D. Omega-3s, unless you eat a lot of fish, are kind of hard to get. So those are supplements that I take almost every day, like magnesium, omega-3s, a little bit of vitamin D, vitamin K, I take every day. I mean, I do get a lot of sun, so vitamin D, I don't have to be as strict with it. But omega-3s, I'll eat fish like a couple times a week, but I like to take omega-3 every day, especially because I'm typically on a low-fat diet, which is what you're going to see I advocate here. And magnesium is crazy good for sleep. And then I drink coconut water at night, which helps with potassium, magnesium, all that stuff. But chicken has a lot of potassium too. But anyways, it's always good to get blood work if you can, but it's not super mandatory per se. Like a lot of clients, we don't do blood work. We just get them on a good diet plan that hits these naturally, and along with the training plan and everything else, majority get great results. Only in like maybe 1 to 3% of cases, if the results aren't what we expect, we might look at some of these other factors. Now, here is the main, everything here contributes to speeding up your metabolism, but this is like the secret sauce that we really use with everybody, or almost everybody at some phase or another, okay? So as you know from what I broke down previously, Bodybuilders usually do 6 to 8 meals a day, and each one has about 50 to 75 grams of protein, 50 to 75 grams of carbs, and basically zero added fat. But that's not realistic for most people, and it's definitely overkill. And also, like, if you're 230 pounds, but your body fat is like 30% instead of like 6% or 8%, like these juiced up bodybuilders, they have a lot more muscle mass, so they have to eat a lot more protein and carbs to sustain that amount of muscle mass. But for you, if you're just trying to build a natural amount of muscle, you have a more normal body, you're not going to need that much. Okay. Instead, what you're going to do is your meals are also going to have about 50 carbs, 50 protein, or if that's a little too much for you, or if you're a woman, you could go as low as 30, or maybe you're a smaller guy like 5'2", 120 pounds. You could go a bit lower, but usually for men, 50 carbs, 50 protein, minimal fat, so under 15 grams of fat, is like a perfect portion size where most men feel very satiated. We make healthy recipes, as you may know from some of my other videos, and that is how we make this diet feel super effortless. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, boom, boom, boom. 1 to 2 snacks, easy. That's it, right? And then we want to have a serving of fiber. So 1 cup of veggies, steamed veggies, and these meals usually add up to about 350 to 500 calories, right? You eat 3 or 4 of those a day, very, very easy, right? 3 to 4 meals. If you're doing 3 meals, usually it's good to have 1 to 2 snacks, ideally 2. And if you're having 4 meals a day, which most people are on 3, right? But if you're doing 4, then the snack is semi-optional, but 1 protein snack a day is usually great. And the snacks always need to be 20 plus grams of protein and no more than 200 calories, right? If you get this in, your macros are going to be optimized for metabolism. And a lot of people don't even have to do the whole reverse diet where they slowly up their calories, which I'm going to detail in the next slide. Just from fixing your macros and getting 40% of your calories from protein, 40% from carbs, and only 20% from fat, and eating on a more frequent basis, your metabolism is going to skyrocket. You're going to be strength training, you're going to be walking. Most clients lose weight just by that. However, if somebody has a severely suppressed metabolism that even that doesn't optimize their metabolism and their calorie deficit enough to start losing weight, well, in that case, then we have to do a reverse diet. And even when you do, my typical, protocol, which I will be talking about in another video. I'm going to do a video on the 3 different phases of your metabolism, the low calorie fat loss versus metabolic optimization versus high calorie fat loss. So that video will be coming out soon, probably in the next week, inshallah. But even if you do things the right way, once you lose 10 to 20% of your body weight, your metabolism will usually slow down a little bit because it says, wait, we just lost a bunch of weight. Are we dying? Are we starving? Let's slow down metabolism a bit so we don't die and so we don't keep losing weight and put ourselves in danger, right? So when that happens, right, even if you're eating the right amount of food, what I'll do is I'll add a little bit of carbs to 2 to 3 of the meals. So 25 grams of carbs, right? So let's say that a person was eating 1 cup of rice per meal, 50 grams of carbs. I'll up it to 1.5 cups of rice, right? Or let's say somebody was doing, 2 cups of potato or sweet potato. I'll increase that to 3, right? So about a 50% increase, which is about 25 grams of carbs added to each meal. So, they're already on a pretty satiating amount of food, but usually when you hit a metabolic plateau, especially if you're doing things the right way, you'll notice your appetite comes up, your energy comes down, your fat loss slows down, again, after 3 to 6 months, after losing 10 to 20% of your body weight. So in that case, this is where we add carbs to the meals. And then if the person is really active and has a lot of muscle mass, like if a person doesn't have a lot of muscle mass and they're not that active, I'll only add it to 2 of the meals, usually, lunch and dinner, or breakfast and dinner, because usually people like to have a bigger dinner, right? And yes, carbs at night actually helps you sleep. It's not bad for you. People think it makes you fat, but no, it actually helps for most people. But if somebody is like really active, then all 3 of the meals we're going to add carbs, and we're also going to add 25 grams of carbs to one of their snacks. So it could be as small as a 50 gram increase in carbs right off the bat, which is 200 calories. But if somebody's super active and has a lot of muscle, I might just aggressively ramp them up by an extra 400 calories. So if they were at, 2,100 calories and losing weight, and then they hit a plateau and it was not feasible for them to eat less, then boom, all of a sudden I bump them up to 2,500 if they're very active, or up to 2,300 if they're not that active. So either 100 grams of carbs if they're active, 50 grams if they're not, and boom, their energy levels start to skyrocket, right? And their muscle mass increases, their activity levels naturally go up without them having to try, and all of a sudden it becomes easy to hit more steps than they were even trying before, to where I have to say, hey, hold your horses, don't go too crazy, don't be hitting 15K steps a day, otherwise, we're kind of undoing the metabolic increase we're trying to get here because your body's just burning it off through the steps. But sometimes we'll increase protein, but we never increase fat, like almost never, unless somebody was on really low fat. But usually we just keep the fats pretty constant throughout the whole thing because it's minimal. Like most clients are around, like, let's say 45 grams of fat on average. And so we would just keep them at that amount and not go up, because fats, when we start increasing your calories, especially from carbs, because carbs are the best way to stimulate your metabolism. Carbs and protein, although eating more protein can sometimes be hard. So carbs is one of the easiest ways to just skyrocket your metabolism, and it's the easiest macronutrient for your body to use for energy, which is why it's so easy for your body to just boom, turn that into more energy and increase your metabolism and your caloric output per day. Um, However, if we increase fats and we're increasing carbs, well, if we just increase fat without increasing carbs, fat is the easiest macronutrient to store as fat. So that would not be a good scenario, and it doesn't really stimulate your metabolism that much or your energy levels that much. Fat is a more slow burning energy source that your body prefers to store for later or store for emergencies. But carbs, your body likes to use it right away for that quick energy when you're going for your walks, when you're thinking, right? You'll notice that your mental clarity at work improves. You get sharper mentally, everything, your workout performance, your strength, your power output, everything, right? Cardio, everything increases when you increase your carbs. And so, that's why we increase the carbs. But the thing is that if we increase the carbs and you're eating a lot of protein, your body's going to store more muscle and gain more muscle. But if we increase your carbs and you're eating more fat, what happens is now there's more fatty acids in your bloodstream and more calories overall. And then we're spiking your insulin more. But because there's all these fats in your bloodstream, those fats can get stored as fat. So when you're reverse dieting and increasing your calories, you have to keep your fats low or you're at risk of gaining more fat, which is the opposite of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to keep the fat off while increasing your metabolism. So versus if you're eating more protein or just staying on the same high protein amount you were on before and just increasing your carbs, what the insulin from those carbs is going to do is it's going to shuttle those proteins into your muscles, okay, and into your joints and your other tissues that need repair organs, all that stuff. Versus and then we're keeping the fats low, so none of those fats are going to get stored as fat. But if we go high fat when we're going high carb, now all those fats are going to get stored as fat, and we do not want that, okay? So to keep the fat off during this phase, you must keep the fats low, okay? Now, after 1 to 2 weeks of increasing your carbs by this amount, so you're now eating 200 to 400 more calories than you were when you were losing fat, okay, an extra, 50 to 100 grams of carbs. After about 1 to 2 weeks, your weight should be pretty stable. Maybe you gain a bit of water weight initially because your body suddenly is holding more water due to the carbs, but your waist size does not go up. Your waist size should not go up. You should just notice that your muscles are getting fuller. You're getting better pumps. You feel stronger. You feel more energetic. And then from there, after 2 weeks, sometimes people's metabolism will respond so fast that they actually get into a calorie deficit. Even though they're eating 200 to 400 calories more, they're burning more than 200 to 400 calories more. And so they end up getting back in a deficit and losing body fat. That happens about 20 to 30% of the time. But I would say 60 to 70% of the time, people's waist stays the same. So they don't gain fat, they don't lose fat, but they get to eat a lot more calories and they definitely gain muscle. And so then at that point, after 1 to 2 weeks, then we increase it even more and even more. And after about 4 to 6 weeks, they're eating a crazy amount of food. It's clean food. So at this point, instead of feeling like it's very little food, now they're like, wow, this is actually, too much food. So psychologically, they start to look forward to eating less and getting back into, a lower calorie diet. But their metabolism just keeps ramping up. Their muscle mass keeps ramping up, which gives them more longevity to their metabolism. And so the next time they want to get into a fat loss phase, it's extremely easy. And so this is really the big sauce right here, is knowing what's the right amount. Like, this is the initial amount I increased your calories, but we have to go based on those weekly check-ins to determine what's the appropriate amount of food to add each week, okay? Once we have those weekly check-ins, we see how they're feeling, we see how their body's responding, we see how they're digesting, we see, what are their metrics, weight and waist size. That's when we can make the right decisions, whether we keep increasing calories or whether we keep it the same, or whether we switch back into when we switch back into the fat loss phase. And this is the correct way to do that. So that's the one of the biggest drivers here. I mean, all these things are important, but the reverse diet is the biggest thing that's going to increase your metabolism, combined with obviously everything else. Now, as far as activities, sleep, and stress management, I put them all on one slide because these are important, foundations as well that complement what we're doing here. So, typically we want to be walking 8 to 10K steps a day during the metabolic recovery. Like during fat loss, I'm definitely fine with people walking 15K steps, sometimes a little bit more. Just try not to go too much higher than 15K, or there's a higher risk of your body starting to fight the process or getting overwhelmed. But during metabolic recovery, we don't want to go too high. We want to keep it at 8 to 10 so that the body does not perceive excess stress, okay? Because 8 to 10K steps is not very stressful for most people, but once we get into that 15K plus category, it can be stressful to the body to where it may backfire, and we don't obviously want to backfire here. We want the metabolism to speed up, okay? Now, in your fat loss phase, you can do 12 to 15K, but during metabolic recovery, 8 to 10 is a sweet spot, 12K max if you're really feeling it, but don't go higher than that, okay? And then obviously beyond 15K is at risk of, undoing some of the benefits we're trying to induce. Now, 8 to 10K is also perfectly sufficient during fat loss. It really just depends on how many steps you like to do and what's realistic for you, okay? But the goal here is that we're trying to get the metabolism to do most of the work, not the cardio. The cardio is just a cherry on top. But when we're trying to lose fat, we want our metabolism to be doing most of the work, which is why I'm a big fan of these metabolic optimization principles. Not everybody has to do a reverse diet. A lot of people, just by doing everything else other than the reverse diet, their metabolism will dramatically improve. However, if you just lost a lot of weight, or you've come off a lot of chronic diets, or you've come off intermittent fasting or keto or something crazy like that, we may need to baby step your carbs up. Obviously, if you're coming off keto, we're not going to start at 150 or 250 grams of carbs a day. We might just start, if you're starting at 0 to 30 grams of carbs, we might only go up by 25 grams of carbs a day. And then just slowly transition you out of keto, because after you've gone through keto, your body doesn't really know how to use those carbs anymore, etc. Your metabolism just slowed down. You've lost muscle, so we have to slowly add those carbs back in if you're coming off keto, right? But I'm just giving general recommendation here. But getting on these principles usually makes a very big difference. And if you have a chronically slowed metabolism, we might just need to do an extended reverse diet phase. Where we just keep upping your calories. And again, how do we know how much to increase your calories by? We have to have an actual conversation, see what's your biofeedback, your results, etc., to know what's the appropriate amount to increase it. But the goal of this whole phase is to get our metabolism to do most of the work. Because 60% of the calories you burn every day come from your metabolism, not from the other things. So why would we not optimize that and only focus on cardio, which may only make up 5 to 10% of the calories you burn each day, right? But another really important factor here is we got to make sure that we got good stress management and sleep, right? As you saw in my other point, you have to be doing some sleep, you need to be sleeping 7+ hours a night. You need to have stress management down, everything else. So I have actually a lot of videos. I actually have a very popular video on my channel. It's one of the most popular videos on my channel on 6 steps to lower stress based on both science and sunnah. So you can go check that out, and I can attach a few at the end, a link to my mini course, all that stuff, and I can link some real life examples at the end too. But yeah, I mean, 7+ hours of sleep, getting the stress management routines, which I talk about in the other videos, these are also going to have, a positive effect on your metabolism, especially if the root cause of your slow metabolism is high chronic stress. So, I'll link those up at the top, at the end on the end screen. But I know that this can be a lot of information overwhelm, and you may not be sure how to implement all of this into your life with your unique circumstances. And this is where one-on-one coaching comes in, because if you either are not sure where to start with all of this, or you have some idea, but you don't want to just, waste time trying to get there on your own, but you'd rather get there faster with professional help and do it professionally from the beginning, I'll attach a link for one-on-one coaching in the description, inshallah. And then if you're more, relatively new to my page, so where you're not necessarily ready for that yet, I'll attach the fat loss mini course. I'll attach my client testimonial highlights here, and then you can check out the other videos on my channel on the various topics we covered today. But I hope that this comprehensive breakdown on how to optimize your metabolism if it's only slightly slow, and how to completely fix it if it's chronically destroyed and slow from a history of bad dieting helped. I'll attach the thingies up here, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video, inshallah. One-on-one coaching is here. Look forward to seeing you in there whenever you're ready. I look forward to seeing the next video up here. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.